Well, hello, neighbors. Welcome down to the Nook, and actually, welcome to spaces across Canada because it is a live. It's a whiskey conversation. It's going to be a great Tuesday night because we have with us tonight Bob from Two Brewers. Bob, welcome to the channel.
Hey, John. Nice to be here. Thanks so much for the invitation.
Well, I really appreciate it. I know you're busy making the next great release that we can all enjoy. So we'll take up just the right amount of time together today. But it is fun to hear a bit of your stories, a bit of your time, because all of us that enjoy your whiskey and anyone tuning in, this is what a label generally looks like right now. I think it's gone through some additions, but you can see, and we'll get into that later on. But I just want to say thank you, Bob. And I want to get into some questions because I have questions, and the people that tune in now will have some. They tend to be quiet, maybe because I talk too much, but we also get quite a few more people that come back on the replay, and so it serves as a nice anchor place to say, Two Brewers. I've heard of them. They're in Canada. Did they make beer somewhere first? Do they make single malt? Let's get to know their story. So that's a tee up to say, Bob, start a little bit. You're deep in. You've been selling whiskey for 10 years, been making it for 19 years. I don't know. We'll get there in a second. But how did you get started?
Well, we have to go back further than that to the late 90s when my partner, Al Hansen, and I started Yukon Brewing. So we're the same company as Yukon Brewing. And it's funny because Al's a chemical engineer. And God, we were like, I'm sure we weren't a year old yet. And he said, what we should do? We should buy a still. And I said, Al, we don't have any money. Like I'm thinking about payroll. You're thinking about a still.
It's a good idea, but how are we going to get there?
Yeah. Well, exactly. And it all came down to the idea, as a chemical engineer, he'd done some distilling in school and all that jazz. Sure. So he was pretty keen on it. And to be honest, I knew very little about it. I'm also an engineer, but I'm mechanical. So all the chemistry behind distilling and all that jazz, that was Al's department, not mine. And
so two engineers get together. You've got chemical, mechanical. So you actually have the ability to do a lot of things. And you get into brewing. Is that the first thing?
It was the first thing, and I think back, we were home brewers and we did a little bit of stuff of that kind of stuff together. But at the end of the day, we knew we needed to know more. So we went to the Siebel Institute in Chicago and took a commercial brewing course, which they have a long one that we couldn't afford, and they have a short one that we could afford. So we thought, well, let's both go to the short one, and then we'll trade ideas and trade answers to questions. But we would go to a class about chemistry, and Al would come out with pages of notes and arrows and circles and drawings, and I'd come out with 7 words. We go to a class on pumps, and I would come out with all kinds of sketches and so on. He would come out with a blank page. So we were probably the perfect match.
That sounds like a really good partnership. No, really, that's awesome.
Yeah. And and it's funny because Al has mentioned a number of times how he's seen partnerships. He spent some time in the financial business doing financial planning work for companies. And he said, I never saw a partnership work ever. Like I swore that I would never get into a partnership. And yet here we were.
Yeah. And here you are. So proof that you can make it work. So that's awesome. So you decide to, like, he was thinking still right away, but takes a minute to get to still. So you did get into brewing though. At Yukon Brewing, you still produce beer. I see it on the shelves. It's good beer. But like, was that easy? Not easy is the wrong term. Everything's challenging. But was that a market that felt collaborative, cooperative? Did people help you, or did you have to carve into that on your own?
Well, beer is beer, and beer has a much wider market than malt whiskey does. So, and in the late 90s, we were sniffing around the front end of the craft beer industry. So we're pretty early arrivers in craft beer. But it's interesting because starting in the Yukon, we had to go through all the licensing thing that everybody does. And I remember going to a meeting at the Yukon Liquor Corporation, and we were walking down after meeting a couple people in the lobby. We're walking down the hall to a boardroom, and the head of licensing, a nice older lady, turned to me and said, why would you ever start a brewery? Don't we have enough beer here? And I thought, boy, what a good question that is. And and it's funny because, of course, in the usual way, we had all kinds of spreadsheets and pro formas and all that jazz. And we
Yeah.
thought we would play with the spreadsheet a bit one day, and took our sales projections and put a 0.95 multiplier on it. And the entire sheet turned red. And
Oh.
our conclusion wasn't that this is a bad idea. Our conclusion was, well, we better not go there. So, so one day we started writing checks, and off the cliff we went.
Hey, that's really awesome. Let's move into whiskey only because that's who's tuning in today. And certainly I've defined myself here as someone who wants to share and talk a bit about whiskey. So you're now brewing, you made your case, and that's going well. And you did suddenly, nope, long-term vision. How did you go, okay, now's the time, or when are we going to get and lay down some liquid?
Yeah, all this nagging that Elle did about buying a still, finally, we were, I mean, it took us quite, let's be honest, it took us 6 or 7 years to know that we were going to survive.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah,
capital intensive business. You sink a lot of money into making beer before you've made your first drop. So you start in a big, horrendous hole, and then you start trying to fill the hole in. And, it takes a while to be found and to create customers and to, create a following. So like I say, it was about 7 years of hole digging. And then we looked around and said, well, guess what? I think we stopped digging the hole. This is a very cool day for us.
yeah,
And that lasted about 30 seconds before one of us said, now, how the hell are we going to get out of this hole?
yeah,
And that was the next step. So it took about 3 years to fill the hole back in. And that's when we said, all right, Al, now we can buy a still. We can afford a still. So let's start looking around for one. That was 2007, and it was 2009 before we bought it. So we took a
wow,
very engineering approach to it. We needed to figure it out and get it
yeah.
right. And if we couldn't make it work on paper, we couldn't make it work in reality. So off we went.
Yeah, well, a couple of different fields, but fellows that know how to plan and know how to look forward. So that's, you made it work. You got it on 2009. You said that's when the still kind of went in, or that's when you actually first brought some liquid off the still, 2009.
Well, it arrived. We bought the still in Germany, or from a German supplier, Christian Karl, and so it
Oh,
came over in two big crates, and
yeah.
it arrived. I remember it was the Thursday before Good Friday. It was right before the Easter weekend,
Okay.
so it came in a whole bunch of parts and pieces, along with a set of instructions that said put A to A and B to B and C to C, and so off we went, uncrating and putting A to A and so forth. And by the end of the Easter weekend, we had our still sitting in the corner ready to go, and we piped in the steam supply to it and the condensate return from it and all the electrical bits and pieces to it. And that following week, we made our first batch of malt whiskey. And the reason that we got straight off to the races was that, let's be honest, making whiskey is essentially identical to making beer. We were
Yeah.
creating alcohol, had been creating alcohol for 10 years. We allowed it to get to a certain point and then carry on down a certain path to make beer. If we interrupted that path and went another direction, then we could make malt whiskey. So it starts as beer. We knew how to make beer. We knew how to ferment. Fermentations are where there's a real danger of infections and
Sure.
things going bad. We'd made all the mistakes by that time. We had 10 years of beer making, so
Yeah,
off
you'd
we
work
went
through that.
making
Yeah.
whiskey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, pause for a moment. I do want to get more history, and then I always have a mark. I don't even know. I don't have a clock on what I'm looking at. But by around 15 minutes in, if we don't have a whiskey poured, we're doing a disservice for those that tune in. So just giving you that. But talk for a minute about fermentation, because I think, well, for those that don't make whiskey or haven't been around people that make whiskey, I don't make it. I've been around them though. Like I really believe like the styles of yeast, the length of fermentation, all of those processes that go into that stage could be talked a bit about a bit more. Do you have now a refined way that, hey, you know what, most of our single malts, this is how we ferment, or do you do a variety of fermentations? What do you want to let us know about fermentation?
Yes and no. I mean, let's back up a step and talk about
Okay,
the grain that goes into the fermentation.
sure.
So,
Let's
if we're
talk
making a
about
beer that's a lager, we'll use a certain mix of grain. We'll have a mash bill that we work out to make a lager. If we're
sure.
making a big stout, we still have a grain bill, but it looks real different. You can imagine how different the grain bill looks, full of black malts and chocolate malts and all that jazz.
Yeah.
And that's why we called it Two Brewers, is we thought, let's make whiskey as though we're brewers, because that's what we are. So
Okay.
right off the hop, we started using a whole variety of malted grains. So we started filling barrels with new make that was made from black malt and roasted malt and honey malt and Vienna malt and Munich malt and caramel and
Oh,
you name it. And what
yeah.
we did, we patterned our new make off of making beer styles, because we knew how to make those, and we had some pretty proven recipes to make those. So all of our new make was not intended to be, and we knew that everything that we made would be real different from the thing we made the week before, the month before.
Yeah.
But that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to fill barrels with a whole variety of flavors, coming from different flavors in the new make.
I love that idea because it gives you a like a color palette. Because another part we'll get to. We're going to jump around because my mind is just going to go where it needs to. Bob, I apologize, but as you're describing, you understand making beer, so you're going to lay down that honey malt or the whatever malt, like you got these different things. But now I feel you've got a color palette in barrels. It's aging, it's interacting, it's going to be changing and evolving. But also like that new make spirit is going to be different because of the different malt. And then at some point, you're going to be blending, because I do believe when I hold a bottle like this one here, this isn't a single cask. This is different casks that go into a release like this. I know you have single casks. I'm not saying you haven't done that, but in general, like a release like this is a classic series. This actually would be an expression of, you're tasting, you're monitoring different casks, and then you're creating kind of the art of the blend. It's still a single malt, your distillery, all malt, but it is that kind of blend work. Is that right?
That's 100% right. And I find it intriguing that you gave me the segue to talk about a color palette, because that's something I talk about often is our whole array of barrels that we have in the back. Our goal is that every barrel essentially is different from the barrel beside it.
Yeah.
Of course, when we're filling barrels, when we do a batch, we fill about 8 barrels at a time. So, we do have a set of 8 barrels that would have this, similar ingredients to it, but we
Okay.
don't want that to necessarily be the same as the next 8 barrels. The whole idea being that, if I was an artist and I wanted to paint something and all I had were shades of blue, I would probably have a pretty boring painting. But if I had reds and oranges and yellows and greens and all the other colors, think of the kinds of paintings that I could make. And we look at the whiskey, and to me, an artist that is using all those different paints is exactly what we do when we're blending from all those different barrels that started different because the grain bills were different. We use different barrels. We'll use ex bourbon barrels from different bourbon distillers. We'll use virgin oak barrels. We'll use sherry barrels. We strive to make everything different so that we have that enormous color palette. The bigger the color palette, the more interesting the art that comes out the other end.
Well, I totally agree. So I've jumped ahead to blending. We started with actually, no, let's talk about the malt that we're making. A little bit of the history, though, the story, because I heard some feedback, and it's fun to see some of the chatter, some of my highlights, some of them I'm just happy they're talking about. Release 24 is fantastic, and other releases that they're enjoying. I appreciate that. But when you start releasing, did you have a vision for? And again, here I jump ahead. Right now, you have unique. All your releases are unique, but you do have somewhat categories, and I only have really two of them. I've got an innovative here, and we can talk about that. Then you have peated, which I don't have any on the shelf right now. And then you've got like is it special finishing, something like that, I think is the line. And then you've got the classic. That's not going to stay. You've got the classic. And even though this one has a different label on it, it does say still classic, that release 50. So I don't know why this one's green. You can talk to me about that a bit later. But that's a bit now. You're mature. You've been making whiskey for 19 years, selling it for 10. you've not settled, that's the wrong term. You've established, like as a person who goes to buy Two Brewers, I look at it like, oh, that's in the peated line, or that's in the innovative line, and it gives me a bit of history. Did you start with that in mind?
We did, and part of the reason that we did that is that we knew that in the grand scheme of things, we make very little whiskey, and the only way that we could have a classic, a Two Brewers that was always you go to the shelf and you just grab a Two Brewers without these unique releases, was that we would have to use colorings and flavorings and somehow just didn't have enough volume
Right.
to have a consistent, always the same flavor. So we thought about that a bit and said, well, if we can't do it, let's lean into the fact that we can't do it. Let's make every release unique. We'll start with release number 1 and we'll climb our way up from there. God knows, maybe one day we'll get to 10. And here we are at 52. But the whole idea of it was that let's not try to make everything the same because we don't think we can do it well. So let's go to the other end of that stick and make everything real different. However, we looked at our customer and said, they don't want to just grab a bottle of whiskey at $100 a bottle or whatever it is, and not really know what they're getting. We have to tell them if it's peated because maybe they hate peated. We have to tell them if it's got a sherry finish because maybe they don't like that sweet aspect to sherry finishes. So that's why we created the categories. Is they'll all live in a category, but a classic this year and a classic 2 years ago and a classic next year will all live in a picture of Venn diagram, right, in a circle. So there'll be an overlap in there, but it'll do exactly what you just did. It'll move around. Don't expect them all to be the same. If you loved release, you mentioned, I think you mentioned 24, which was an interesting one. I remember that one. It had a bunch of Vienna malts, and basically it was heavily weighted towards an Oktoberfest beer. So if you picture all the Vienna malts and Munich malts that go into that style of beer, it gave it a real nutty flavor. I thought it tasted a bit like peanut brittle in a glass. But and again, we'll probably get something similar to that at some point. But for sure, if you love 24, like loved it, and you didn't buy 2 bottles, you're probably out of luck.
Yeah, and that's a good tip for people that might be tuning in or on the replay. Like if you hear chatter out there, right? Oh, this is a really good release, or this is picking up a bit of steam. It's a good idea to go and hunt it down because you still are in small matches. You still don't have the volume of some of the big players. And if that release is gone, well, then it's gone. And that's part of its uniqueness. And there'll be another one coming on. Now, I said, we're a couple minutes back. So I'm going to pour a little bit of this. These are what I have. And so we have to work, but we can talk beyond it as we did. So I want to talk this as a representative of classic, right? This is 48. And I don't know if you recall, every release, every release. I know you know that. But I don't know what you'd want to highlight specifically about 48. It might still be around. Or if you want to talk again about classic. When you're putting together a classic, actually, I'd like to know how you do that. Do you have a team? Is it you and Al sitting back drinking barrels and going, yeah, that's the blend? Or how does that work?
Yeah, if I was sitting in my office right now, you would see a whole bunch of little 4-ounce bottles of samples out of barrels. Because that's, and we know we have some idea of what kind of flavors are going to come out of a barrel, but it's only an idea. We know what went into it. We really don't know how it's behaving over time. So we'll pull little samples out and we will taste them and we'll start to play with what will work together. What do we think will play together nicely? It's interesting, this release 48. It was normally there's 4 or 5 mashes 4 or 5 barrels that are combined to make a release. This one has 17. It's I think that it was a little bit of we got a bunch of ones that are getting low and we should use them up. So let's see how many we can put together to make an expression. And it's interesting because I have what I've heard people call an infinity jar. It's a big 2-liter pickle jar sitting in my office that when we're finished with samples and we take what's left and we dump it in the pickle jar. And when it fills up, we get another pickle jar. And one day I thought, I bet what's in this pickle jar, which is totally random dumps of this and that over time, I bet you it tastes pretty good. So I poured myself a glass and I tried it. And I learned right then and there that there's a lot more to getting a blend that works. That was terrible.
Oh,
And
oh no.
I learned right away. Well, it's funny because I put some into another jar and brought it home. And for cooking, we'll dump that whiskey into some into pulled pork or something like that because
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
That was
but
good. That'll
it did
soften
not
up the
taste
meat a
good.
bit.
And
And, yeah,
yeah,
for sure. That's a good use.
yeah. So
Yeah, a lot of guys keep infinity bottles. They don't have a whole pickle jar like that, but they but I know when I've tried it, and I don't have anything on the go right now, I do try to run in theme. So I am thinking a little bit as I add into it, like so I don't just drop it in because it can be a cacophony of flavor that you're like, I don't even know what's happening here.
do you ever get one that works like a hot damn?
I only hear other people that do that. My infinity bottles are okay, but none of them have been killers. None of them. I don't know. I must be, maybe I'm doing it wrong. I'm trying to do it right by really thinking what I'm adding, and I'll have 4 of them on the go, and this one's going to run like peat, for example. It doesn't ruin flavor, but it takes over, right? So I don't want to put peat in the ones that I don't want to have peat, that kind of stuff. It still
Well,
doesn't,
it's
it comes together
interesting.
okay. Yeah.
People love single barrel releases or single mash releases,
Yeah.
and I think it's the romance of the fact that this is a one of a kind thing,
Yeah.
and I know it drives Al crazy. And the reason for that is that he hasn't ever tasted a whiskey out of a barrel that he said that's really good, but I can make it better. And when you're doing a single barrel release,
Yeah.
you're putting it out and people love it, but in the back of our minds, we know, this could just use a little bit of something, something.
Yeah.
Um,
And a little bit
yeah,
of this might just brighten that nose or bring that dimension just a bit. Like we're not talking radically. It might even be whatever. You know this. I just play around with this, but it might even be majority that cask because it's a honey. Like what I mean is that cask is really good, but I believe it's exceptionally rare for a single cask to have that everything from a beautiful nose to that length, long palate, beautiful, good finish. Like to get all of those out of a single cask. Well, I mean, it happens, but I don't. I think it's pretty rare.
yeah, I totally agree. And there's whiskeys that we make. Like we will make sour mash whiskeys from time to time. And of course, sour mash is a term that you read out of Kentucky or Tennessee, and
Yeah.
really all that is it's a pH adjustment on the mash that the marketers got a hold of and said, "Oh, you adjusted the pH, you made it sour. Let's call it a sour mash." We're brewers, so when we make a sour mash whiskey, we make it the same way we'll make a sour beer. We will sour the beer in the kettle. We'll infect it with lactobacillus.
Oh,
And we'll let
really?
it sit for a couple of days to develop some really crazy, funky, sour flavors, and then we will ferment it, and then we will distill it, and then we will barrel it. And everything that comes out of those barrels with that sour mash has a very distinctive, citrusy, bright, sharp note. And what you described when you take something out of a barrel and you think it just needs a little turn of a screw somewhere, things
Yeah.
like our sour mash whiskeys are exactly that turn of the screw that we will use quite often. And it's
Yeah.
amazing. It's like you say, 4 or 5% will
Yeah.
change a whiskey radically. And we're often looking for those complex layered flavors that a little addition of this or that really, really creates.
So, Ben Demon Hunter, cheers. It just tried to prove us wrong by saying, not prove us wrong, but just was saying, yes, but you do have some single cask releases that are beautiful. And he was celebrating a Wine and Beyond 10th anniversary rye release. And he really wanted to say that was an excellent single cask. So you do hit some single casks and you do them well.
Well, and it's interesting. Al and I don't always differ. In fact, rarely differ. But one of the things that when he says I could make that better, often I'll say I don't know about that. I think only in your head. So I agree. Some of the single cat. I mean, a good example of that is our recent release 50. That Wine and Beyond release was extremely good.
Yeah.
I will agree. The release 50 that just came out really knocked it out of the park, and it's not a single barrel; it's a single mash.
Wait,
So yeah,
I'll get it.
quite different. Yeah, that's
Okay,
the one
so
with the
you know what?
different colored label. So
I was thinking that was going to be something that we got into later, but everybody already is talking about in the chat. You're already talking about it here, and maybe you can still chase it down. I don't know. Is your website? Do you have any more? Or are you out?
we do have some of that left. Yep, yep.
Okay.
It's getting down. We're just doing a count today actually, and it's getting down to a pretty dull roar, but it's not gone.
So can
And it's
you?
an interesting one because
Yeah.
it's 14 years old. So
Yeah.
it's not it's from mash number 11. So when we're doing a mash, we're basically doing a distiller's beer, fermenting it, and then barreling it. That was from our mash number 11, 14 years ago.
Okay.
And we had 3 barrels of it left, and we had actually picked it out to be a single barrel release, except a single barrel release will often only get a couple hundred bottles out. The Angel Share, if it's got any kind of age in it, will take care of a lot of it. This one here, though, while it was a single mash, we had two. It had all started in ex-bourbon barrels. Then we moved it to virgin oak barrels. Then we took 2 of those 3 barrels and left them in virgin oak and put one into a pretty neutral bourbon barrel.
Oh.
So there was a little bit of a variation in the barreling,
Okay.
uh, but it was a single mash. It all started out of the same batch of whiskey to fill the barrels with 14 years ago.
Yeah. You saw a comment I dropped in by Rob, and others are sharing that thought, and it's very different than, like, this is the 48 Classic here. You can see the color difference even on my poor camera. And I know you do natural color. You do non-chill, right? You do non-chill in all your releases, or do you filter
Yeah,
sometimes?
there's no chill filtering at all. Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I thought.
and no
Um,
coloring.
but it is, and anyone I've poured it for, people that have bought it because I said you should buy it, will come back and they will all talk about it. Like they're not all, this is my favorite whiskey ever, but they're all like, whoa, like that really made my group just like stop. And what were we getting in that one? What were the flavors? And I liked how you walked through a little bit of the different casking, and mash, and like, what else can you tell me about this product? Like anything, any clue about it? Because I think it's fantastic. It's currently, oh wait, hang on. Clarify again, single malt, you just did, but I'm slow. So, people say it's single malt, and for me, single distillery, malt, all barley. But then you mention mash, and mash billed whiskeys are that when you use different, like when you actually create a mash bill and you're mashing different, like you might do barley and rye, but then it's not a single malt. So tell me again why it's a single mash.
Well, a couple things there. Malt does not equal barley. Malt equals grain that was malted.
Fair enough.
So you can have malted
Good
wheat,
correction.
malted rye for sure. We do have some whiskeys made with rye, but they're malted rye, not cooked rye, which is really tricky to work with. And I won't go down that road.
Yeah.
Anybody who's ever brewed with rye knows what a pain in the butt that is,
Yeah.
because rye doesn't have a husk. So there's the challenge of working with it. The husk that comes off of barley or wheat acts as a filtration when you're lautering the
Yeah, sure.
distiller's beer, and you can't, that won't work with rye, so you have to take other steps for it. There's no husk there to filter with.
Yeah, I've had a fair share of 100% malted rye releases, and if I get to talk to people making it, I hear it's a challenge.
It's a challenge, and I mean, our trick, and it's probably everybody's trick, is using rice hulls. So you add you
Yeah,
create a hull that doesn't come on the rye, so you create one that comes off
sure,
of something that won't add any flavor
sure.
to it. So that creates the filter bed when you're lautering.
Well, I appreciate you correcting me on malt. I run
That's
into
good.
that mistake so quickly because I have a lot of Scotch on the shelves, and I often think of single malt and Scotch. And for them, I do believe the regulation is when they say single malt, it is 100% malted barley. So, but my apologies. There's definitely
No,
malted rye.
sorry to correct you, but I think it's important. A lot
No,
of
it's
people
very important.
they
Yeah,
think that in fact, a lot of people are puzzled when they read on our label, like our release 51, which we haven't got to yet. In fact, I don't know that that's a peated one. Yeah, I know. You don't have that one. Had we been more organized, we'd have dropped some off with you, but it does have some wheat whiskey in it. And
Oh,
wheat whiskey comes out very, very light. It's a lot lighter in body than a barley malt, but it
sure.
is malted wheat. It's not unmalted wheat. That
Okay.
to use unmalted grains, you have to. And again, we don't do it, so I may be wrong here. You have to cook it, and then you use enzymes to
Yeah.
break down. So the cooking helps break it down, but then you have to add the enzymes that would naturally form with the malted grains.
Yeah, or you get around it with a mash bill product, right? Where you do take some percentage of malted barley and you add it to your unmalted wheat or whatever, because then those enzymes will work in the mash when you're doing that work. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you do that, it's no longer malt whiskey. Simple as that.
Nope.
It's a grain whiskey, or there's a whole bunch of terms, and because we don't use them, I probably will get them wrong if I start trying to look smarter than I am.
Well, I wouldn't be able to correct you. Anyways, so this release 50 is getting a good response. What do you're not drinking anything with me. Am I just going to be drinking and talking? Do you have anything there you want to pour and sip with me?
I've got my glass of water,
Oh,
and no, it's not beer in this glass. It is water.
well, I find like when you walk through, I'm just going to take a little sip.
Please do.
Mm, it is so okay, so I was just going to run into a word like if I talk about spicy, people run into pepper and rye. And for me, what I mean is I get some wood structure, some tannins. I get like a savory note. I'm trying to figure out what kind of spice palette am I playing in here. I actually find this palette, this gives me lots of flavors to chew around in. And the nose, like it starts kind of fruity, but it also goes savory. Have you heard people like a million people describe it a million different ways? Flavor is definitely personal, but I find when I come off of 48 like this has a lot more floral, a lot more light, a little more vanillas, like that kind of classic butterscotch, that kind of thing. A little more when I'm thinking ex-bourbon and nice malts. But this just gives me so much more. Like I could say richness, but I'm trying to say for me that means those different level of flavor. Like my mouth is watering, even though I just had a little sip. That's what this one does for me. How do you describe 50 when you're trying to talk through the flavors you get out of
Yeah, I think you nailed it down pretty well. I do think the fact that two of the three barrels we used from that particular mash 11 um, sat in virgin oak for much longer than we normally would. And when you leave, what we find, you leave whiskey in virgin oak, you just, I guess it goes without saying, you pick up a lot of oakiness, you pick up a lot of
it?
that tannin.
But it's
Um,
true.
you know, and when you say spicy, I think probably like there's no rye in there. Often spice is associated with rye, and there is none in there. But I think you're picking up a lot of the spice that came from the virgin oak barrels that
Yeah.
the whiskey sat in longer than we normally would. And that's where I say we had one of the three barrels that was in a pretty old um, bourbon barrel that
Yeah.
probably was picking up some of the vanilla notes.
Yeah.
Certainly wasn't picking up a lot of oakiness because that barrel was pretty spent when we used it. But we did
Yeah.
that on purpose. We thought that there's um, it was just a way of getting flavors
Yeah.
um,
For sure.
all developing from the same liquid.
Well, and now that you're in this range, like a 14-year-old whiskey also has like and you'd be able to tell me here some of those chemical interactions that actually take quite a bit of time to rebuild some of the esters. And that's one thing I was going to say. I gave you my first impressions because it's the first sip of whiskey I've had tonight. Um, but there is an echo, or it comes on and it becomes another note. I find of some dark fruits in here. Now I don't believe there's any wine casking. I didn't hear that or those kinds of things. So this is now the whiskey itself. And I think sometimes that's like 14 is long enough now that we're getting some esters reforming and that can bring us some fruit notes. Would you think of any other fruit like influence that could be coming out 14 years later?
No, 100%. It's the grains that went into the barrel in the first place. Like I say, our
That's
new
true
make's
too.
always different. The grain bills,
Sure.
I won't say always different. We do have some standards that we go back to, but we strive to make them different. And interacting with the barrel and the just that barrel effect of that you get
Mhm.
you get in all whiskeys. And quite honestly, we've tried taking some barrels that have the same whiskey or the same liquid that they were filled with, sitting in a relatively side by side in our storage areas, um, and sampled out of two of them, and you would never in a million years think they were the same. It's
Really?
ridiculously incredible how the magic of
Oh,
the barrels, and you know, I say magic of the barrels, but to me it's magic.
yeah.
I'm sure there are smarter people than me who earn PhDs studying how things react with barrels. To me, it's just magic.
Hey, I'll take magic. Also, I'd love to do that PhD if I was going to do a PhD. That sounds like a good one too. Hey, let's shift gears entirely. We might come back to 50, but I'm glad we talked about it because I see in the chat there are some bottles here in Alberta. There's some bottles. Actually, you do have a few at the brewery, so it is available. So often I'm talking about whiskeys that are great. I'm sorry you guys can't get them. And that's no fun. So if anyone tunes in now, you got to get on there pretty quick. And actually, since I'm pausing for that, do you guys have a newsletter or something that just reminds people or lets people know, like you mentioned, 51 is a repeated release. Hey, this is coming out, or anything like that. Like, do you have something like that to help people know?
Yeah, we sure do. If you go to our Two Brewers website and sign up, we actually just kind of restructured it so it looked a little bit different. Hopefully, it's a little more eye catching and engaging for people. We call it the distiller's table. So
Ah,
we're basically inviting you to take a
nice.
chair at the distiller's table. We have all of one version that's come out. We did that as you were saying earlier on. It's been 10 years that we've been selling whiskey, so we thought, yeah, it's about time that we put some polish on that newsletter. So version 2 will come out at the end of March, which just means I got to get busy and write something for it.
Right. Yeah. Awesome. I look forward to it, and I like to do that. Oh, a related question, actually. I don't know if it was answered in the chat, but I saw it. Do you ship, and is that part of the new legislation anywhere in Canada now? Like people can buy right from you and it'll go anywhere in Canada, or mostly anywhere in Canada, or no?
Yes, we do ship anywhere in Canada that's not a dry community. So there's a
Right.
few of
Yeah.
those around, and we won't ship there. But yes, anywhere in Canada. And it was interesting because there was a new bill introduced in Parliament, I think just today, that mandated Canada Post to deliver alcohol to any province from any province or territory.
Yeah.
Um, Made me snicker a little bit because we've been doing that for a couple of years now. Really, our theory, quite honestly, is if anybody wants to question us, we'll ask forgiveness instead of permission. And um,
Yeah.
we won't ship across borders, but we will ship, or across international borders, but we will ship anywhere in Canada.
That's good. That's good to know. I think, as you said, like yourself, been doing it for a few years. Most distilleries I got on the channel, they've been shipping around the country. But now I do believe it is certainly sanctioned and official for everyone. Okay, I don't have 51. I'll just keep saying that until we all feel bad. I don't have it. But we should talk about innovative, because I briefly met you in Edmonton and we talked about this one, and I believe 46. This particular one is, did you proof it down using wort? Is that this one?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
That's a pretty oddball whiskey, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Of course, the liquid that's in a barrel is nominally in the barrel at 65% alcohol. And I say nominally because when we do a batch and we take the new make off the still and start filling barrels, we want the barrels to be full. So sometimes what's coming off the still will be a lot more alcohol than 65%. So we're deproofing it with water to fill the barrels, and we'll add a little more, a little less water to make sure the barrels are full. Um, but when you like the one that you're pouring, and I've got it listed here, and I can't remember it. 46 is 46% by coincidence. So to get it from 65% in the barrel to
Yeah.
46% in the bottle, we add water. Every distiller does it. They add water.
Yeah.
That's the industry way to do it. And it dawned on us one day, because we're always challenged to make something an innovative whiskey. Well, what can we do that no one's ever tried before?
Yeah.
We came up with the idea of using some wort, some brewer's wort from the
Yep.
next whiskey batch, to deproof this whiskey with. Excuse me. So instead of using only water, we use some wort, and we tried varying levels of wort till we got a flavor we liked. Of course, wort has lots of great. It's very sweet.
Oh yeah.
Excuse me, I got my water here.
Oh,
It's
that's
very
okay.
sweet.
Yeah.
It's very sweet because it's full of sugar because the sugar hasn't fermented yet. So
Right.
there's no alcohol in it because the sugar hasn't fermented, but it's very grainy and very sweet.
Yeah.
And we
It
thought,
is.
people will put maple syrup or other ingredients like that into whiskey. Why not wort from the next whiskey? I will
But and
say that
it is unique. Like I when you're first, because I've just been nosing too. They're very different whiskeys, but they are more classic whiskeys than this one. And then you'd mentioned, yeah, all kinds of sugars and oatmeals or grains or things, but kind of reminds me of being in a distillery. I've had the good fortune of walking around a few, and I've smelled these smells in the air. Yeah,
yeah, well, certainly when we're making our distiller's beer, so we're
yeah.
making beer that it eventually is bound for the fermenters and then the still. Um, that's you certainly get a lot of that aroma and a lot of that flavor. It's quite honestly the wort that's coming off of the brew house you could put on pancakes. It's pretty sweet and
Oh
it's
yeah,
full of grainy flavors.
yeah.
Honestly, it would be ideal on pancakes. We figured that, yeah, let's put some of that in our whiskey, see if it's any good. And to be honest with you, we're still unsure. We're unsure if we'll do it again. We're unsure if it's good. Quite honestly, let's cut straight to the chase. We know it's real different, and I've had feedback that ranges from every whiskey should taste like this. This is the world's best ever. To what the heck did you do here?
Yeah.
You shouldn't do this again. Is the polite way of putting that.
I
So I
am.
know that it's real different, and it's going to be some people's cup of tea and not others.
For sure, and especially when we talk favorites, like that's one thing. Like as a person who shares my thoughts, I'll create lists like these are the best things I've had, or this is the best that. But that doesn't mean it's going to be the best that people that are watching. It really doesn't. Like that's just one person's opinion because this is unique. I'm glad it exists. I really am. I'm really glad the whole innovative series exists. I think I love that creativity, and I think some of them are like real bangers. Like, oh wow, this one is a puzzler for me too. I think you just said that. It's like, well, that is not like I'm not in the camp that says every whiskey should taste like this. This to me is unique, and I'll enjoy it. And I'll pour it for people. Now that this one's open, just to do that, we'll like get a reaction kind of thing, and some will love it. But it doesn't have like there's a lot of different, not classic whiskey tastes in this one. Yeah.
I think that is totally fair to say, and I think that's probably what that wort brought to the mix was flavors that are not. They didn't come from a barrel. They didn't come from they came from a totally different place, and you can pick
Yeah.
them out in there, or pick out that you may not pick it out individually, but you're going to taste it and say there's something weird going on here. Um, and I often, if I do this whiskey at a tasting, I'll often tell people this might be the weirdest whiskey you will ever try. Um, and again, either that works for someone or they go, I'm not so sure. Maybe you should have
Yeah.
stuck to the normal.
Well, and just to be clear, for anyone who's never like tried it or is wondering about it, I will say there's nothing unpleasant in this. That's not my comment. It's sweet, it's grainy, I got to think of something else to say, but it is not unpleasant at all. Like it's not an off flavors, you know.
Well, it's interesting because, of course, we run a store at our facility, and some people come back and buy a second or a third bottle of it,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
uh, often we hear, I wasn't too sure about this, but damn, it's growing on me. So you just never know. And at the end of the day, it's sold out now. So what the heck?
Oh, okay, right on. That and so pause for. I want to pause before I want to talk about. I do want to talk about, and if you have them to show, you don't have to drink them with me. Like a little more current lineup as well. 50 we've established in the chat. There's bottles around, so people can get this. And I do want to talk in a minute about 51 or 52. You said you're at like, just to be a bit current, right? Because that's where we're at. But I wondered, just to pause for a moment. you remembered 24, no problem. You remembered, that nuttiness, that peanut brittle, like that was no problem. Not to put an artist on the spot, but are there any other releases that, because of the story, because of the flavors, your choice, like you would want to say, hey, you know what, like that bottle number, whatever, was a real treat for us?
Well, there's a couple because they turned out, we're throwing a dart at a certain spot on the dartboard, and every now and then you hit the number you're aiming for.
Yeah.
And Release 17 was one of the first ones we did that was very rye forward. And it came out quite delicious, in my opinion. It had all the characters of single malt or of malt whiskey,
Yeah.
which, like I say, normally rye is not malted. Some is, but
Some is, but
but
yeah.
this had the characters of rye and the characters of barley in just the right consistency to come out really well. Another one that we did, the first one we did with using maple. I mentioned maple earlier.
Yeah.
We have a fella here in the Yukon who he's from Quebec, and he does maple syrup products here.
Oh,
So he sources his maple syrup from Quebec. He's got a specific place that he buys from, but he does value added things like maple butter and that kind of thing. But he also does a wood aged maple syrup, or he wanted to do one. So he asked us, excuse me, can I buy a barrel from you guys so that I can wood age my maple syrup? I don't know how long I'll need it. I've never done it before. I just want to try it.
sure.
And our answer was no, you can have some barrels as long as when you're done with them, we get them back. So
Nice.
what we did is we started putting whiskey back into the maple syrup barrel.
Yeah, for sure. Because he that's a good exchange program, right? You can use, but we're gonna bring it back after you've done that. Yeah.
And that first batch was Release 20, and it was so popular. It was ridiculously popular, and I think it's because well, it was way outside of our comfort zone in terms of sweetness level. We've
Yeah.
done sherry finishes and things like that that have some of that kind of sweetness, but
Sure.
that maple sweetness is a very notable and different kind of flavor. So Release 20 was the first one we did. Release 34 was the second one we did, and it was gone in a hurry. And the one sneak peek, Release 52 that just came out, is
Ah,
our third crack at a maple finish. And it's been
okay.
going. And again, we always know how well it's working when we see people in our store coming back for more.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So did you say 20, 30, no, 32? You got help me out here. Say the numbers again because we're at 52.
Okay, so 20 was
Yeah.
the first one, 34 was the second,
34.
and 52 that just came out is the third. So
Okay.
if you like that kind of maple tone to the whiskey, if you like
Yeah.
that backbone, it still has the malt backbone, but it's
Yeah.
very shiny on the edges with that maple character. Then 52 is your guy, because those other ones have long since sold out. I don't know that you'd find a bottle of any of those others.
Well, sometimes you find like you can't rely on it, but sometimes because I actually I hunt, but it's harder these days. I'll go and drive 15 liquor stores. I'll try to find the back anywhere, small towns because I live on the edge of a town, and sometimes you know what you find a dusty. You do, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because I think I had a note a couple of weeks ago or a month ago from someone in Nanaimo who stumbled on a bottle of one of them. Um, and I think I just saw a note on your screen from Dave Gardner. I think I may have said Release 32, and it was a Release 34 was the second maple one. So if I got
yeah.
that
No,
wrong,
you're right. No, the note. Sorry, I flashed it quickly. He was. I think when we were just talking about favorites, maybe he just talked about how 32 was made with chocolate black and Munich malts. That's all. He was
yeah,
just.
so maybe it wasn't my misnumbering or misstatement of the number. Maybe it was just Dave chipping in with his favorite number or one of his favorites, number
What?
32.
That's what I
We
think.
do get ones that come out that are, like I say, you're throwing a dart at a board, and every now and then you hit the number you aimed at.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get close to the number, and we're okay with that because we're not perfect. But every now and then you hit the number, or you hit the triple on the number, and you feel
Yeah.
pretty good about what just happened.
Absolutely. So you actually took us, and hey, people that are there in the comments. Oh, they do have a question. Actually, I'd like
Okay.
to float to yourself as someone who certainly
Yeah.
knows more than me about making Canadian single malt. The question is here. It's just like, what's your outlook, uh, Bob, on the future of Canadian single malt as a whiskey category?
Well, I think it's a growing category, and it's awkward because we do a lot in Alberta because their privatized system gives us a lot more flexibility than most provinces have.
Right.
And we'll go into a store and we'll see that we'll find our whiskey in with the Canadian whiskeys, like Canadian Club or Crown Royal,
Yeah.
and we say no, 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 we don't. It's that's like putting a stout in with your Budweiser. Like, it's real different.
Yeah.
And then we'd find it all over the place. We would always encourage people to put it into the world whiskeys because it tastes
Ah.
more like a world whiskey than it does
Okay.
a traditional Canadian whiskey.
Sure.
But it's good to see so many Canadian malt distillers. I mean, I could name them, a bunch of them, I'm sure, and they're doing great work. Some of the whiskey that's coming out of Macoloni and Eau Claire and Shelter Point, and on and on. I'm leaning
On and
into the
on.
west because that's my backyard here.
No, for
Um,
sure. Yeah.
and I think there's a bright future because I think certainly for us, we're learning every time we do something, and I think that a lot of people are in that same boat, and I think it'll just get better and better.
Are you looking at? Sorry, I'm making you talk so much, but I
No,
have these questions. Are you like? I believe you in some level, like we can ship. You can ship anywhere across Canada. Where I'm trying to get out of here is: are you in most markets in Canada? Like in their distribution centers, in their stores, most places in Canada?
I know we're not. There's always reasons for that. There's some unique ones. I'm going to pick on Manitoba for a minute because
Oh,
I think what they're doing is a bit egregious.
oh,
They have a very good markup, a reduced markup for craft whiskeys or for craft spirits.
okay.
But if anywhere in your facility you use neutral grain spirits to make anything, then you're no longer craft. And we make our
Uh,
gin with neutral grain spirits. I'll be the first to admit it. So we buy
yeah,
basically 94% pure
sure. Yeah,
ethanol from a big distiller, and then we repurpose it and make our gin with it.
sure.
We don't make any whiskey with it. We never would. But the
Right.
fact that we make gin in our plant means that we're not a craft whiskey maker in Manitoba. So our markup is the same as Crown Royal or any of the big guys. And
Right.
I think it's crazy. So we just
Yeah.
don't go there.
Yep.
Um, and again, not to pick on Ontario because that everyone loves to do that.
Everyone
But when
picks
we
on
talk to
Ontario.
them, well, they always tell us, we're very interested in your whiskey. Can you send us some samples that we might be able to get on the shelf in 6 months or so? Because that's our time frame. And our answer is always no, we haven't made whiskeys that'll be out in 6 months yet. We can't send
Yeah.
it to you and by the time you get it and 6 months goes by, it's probably sold out. So again, it's not picking on them, it's picking on us and
Yeah.
our desire to continue to do these small 1,000 bottle or 1,500 bottle releases that are all unique. It really doesn't suit the LCBO model, or our model and their model don't really align.
Well, thankfully you can ship into there, so that's good.
Well, and again, I don't know that we can, but we do.
Yeah. No. Fair enough. Fair enough. Anything you want to highlight? We've been talking, been sharing. I think it continues to be. I appreciate the innovative. If I didn't say that right, like I just think it's really cool to have unique things to try. Definitely the maple. I think that little bit of sweetness resonates with a lot of people. A lot of people do like a whiskey that's finished a bit like not that you'd be an additive, not that you're adding maple syrup, but that it's going to get that out of the cask. And so that's good to know that 52 is on the shelf because I imagine it's going to sell quite well. So again, if anyone out there really liked that 34 or that 20, well, now's your chance. 52 is in the shelves or getting there. I don't know. It's coming out.
It is on the shelf. It is on our website. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. We did talk 51 Pete. We didn't talk through it. If you want to, we can. Do you want to highlight like what's unique or worth thinking about with the 51?
Yeah, it's interesting, and to be honest with you, sometimes my answer to why did this turn out the way it did is I have no idea. It just did, and I would say 51 is like that. We have essentially three pieces of that whiskey. One is 100% peat. So when we're getting our peated malt, we get it from Aberdeen, Scotland, and we make our distiller's beer with that peated malt. And this one so we didn't have any other malts, no malted barley, no malted wheat, nothing else but the peated. So we had 100% peat batch. We had one that was 25% peat, and then we had one that was malted wheat. And we put them together, and we really liked the way they played together. They each brought individual things, but at the end of this release 51, there is a blast of peat that we've never had before, and that's
Ah,
where we're often accused or commented. Accused is maybe a strong word, but our peat is not like the big peat monsters
right.
that
Yeah.
we all know are out there.
Yeah.
They're a little bit more of a subtle. The peat's a flavor, not the dominant. It's one of the layers that's in the whiskey. This one here, it's that way until you swallow, and then it's like the peat said, "Hey, wait a minute, don't forget about me." And how did it turn out to be that way? I honestly have no idea. But it really is. And again, in total honesty, when we started doing this 17 years ago, I wasn't a big peat fan. Now I'm a bit of a peat nut. I've learned to go there, learn to appreciate the flavors in it. And I will say this is my favorite peat that we've done yet, because we got this wicked ending that
Yeah.
wasn't there on any others. So I don't know if we'll ever do it again.
Oh, that's another bottle I'm going to have to chase down then, because that sounded good. I really can enjoy a good peat, especially one that continues. Right. I think that's really something. Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
sounds
I
good.
totally agree. Yeah.
Uh, oh, I've got a question here I missed. Sorry,
Okay.
James. I'll throw it up here and we'll read it together. Would you make whiskey with your beer? Well, okay, now I'm a bit confused because we talked about essentially that whiskey, the process is somewhat, you can continue after you fermented your beer. But the question is, would you make whiskey with your beer? Apparently, a few distilleries tried, and it's very popular. So maybe he means a finished beer product. You've made an actual beer you would normally release, and then you go through the various distilling that you do. Is that the question? You think?
I assume that is the question. And so the big difference between a distiller's beer and a beer is the hops. So when we're making distiller's beer to make whiskey with, what we don't add is hops to it. Except, yes, we've done that. And again,
Oh,
it's part of the trying to create that palette of paints. We
yeah,
thought, you know what, we don't really have any kind of idea what's going to come out of this, but if we don't try it, we'll never know. So we did take a beer that was fully hopped, threw it into the still and barreled it. And it actually, I would put it in that same category. Well, I'd say two things. One, it belongs in that category that we talked about, the sour mash whiskeys, that they're a
oh,
great additive. They don't
yeah,
necessarily stand on their own, but they're a great little flavor tweaker
yeah,
that you have in your arsenal of things that you
yeah.
can add to a blend. But we did do a hopped whiskey release. I think it was release 11. I know that Dave is going to chime in here and either correct me or confirm. And again, I would put it in a similar category to release 46. It was very viscous. A lot of the hop oils carried right straight through the whole process,
Oh,
and
interesting.
gave a body like no other.
Yeah.
But there was also some kind of weirdness from those hop flavors that carried right through to the end that some people loved and thought it was amazing, and some people were, I don't think, ever got quite used to it. Oh, it was 8. There we go.
I think he's saying it's 8. Yeah.
There we go. And
Maybe he had to go look it up. Took him a second to
I will
respond. So.
I will 100% trust that that's true.
Well, it's been a great conversation. We've answered a few questions. I could keep going all night, but I usually try to wrap up somewhere around an hour. If there's any questions you guys want to drop in while I'm doing this wrap up, get them in and I'll just keep talking because I do also like doing live questions. Bob, thank you so much. What would you want to leave with us about maybe what's next or what you'd like to do next, or like just something to tease us what might be coming from you guys?
Yeah, my answer to that is always I don't know, and it's similar to that question that the LCBO wants to know what's going to be 6 months from now. Um, I will say that um, we're always all about the liquid,
Yeah.
and if we don't have a whiskey that wants to be released, then we will continue to work on it until we have that eureka moment that it's what it wants to be. It happened to us here in the fall. We ran out of whiskey in our store. And more was coming, and it was in the works, but it wasn't ready yet. We just didn't have quite the right expression built that we wanted it to be. So we started selling some of our archive whiskeys. We do keep a dozen or so bottles from each release that goes out, and we thought, well, we got to have something on the shelf, so we'll start selling those.
Yeah.
So we did that in our store for a month or so
Huh.
while we waited for the next one to be right. So all I can say is that whatever comes out next will be our best effort at putting something in the bottle that you'll want to enjoy. If it's not up to snuff for us, then we won't put it out.
Well, I really appreciate that. And I would say that resonates to where we started our conversation, in that, you took time to stop digging down, to fill the hole back up. And then when you were making the whiskey, you also took time before releasing it. As you just said, you were not going to put a whiskey out until it's ready to be put out. There are a few more questions. We'll try to cover a couple of them because we were wrapping up. That was good. That was a good ending. We could have tied it on, but there's some good questions. One is, it's a little tricky. I don't know if you want to answer this one. I said I might get one of these, and these are one of them. Awesome. How long you've been in the industry? Truly, thank you for all that work. Some point you might retire. Are you building more brewers that can take over the Two Brewers so that we can keep going?
Yeah, to be honest, we saw that coming, and so probably 5 years ago, we started looking for people working for us who we thought might have legs and might stick around and who would want to participate and really learning to blend is just, it's trial by fire,
Oh,
right? You just do it, and it's I find it very interesting to try to articulate words on flavors,
yeah.
and words on flavors that are missing, but that you think would work. So the guy who's doing it now is my son. So there
Oh,
you go. Tyson is the guy who's taken over the blending. Although it's funny because he's been doing it for a couple of years now, and nobody has noticed any change. So that's a good thing. Um,
that's awesome.
I would say. And as Al got out of it, of course he was popping in now and then. We don't see him too much anymore. He's pretty well retired.
Yeah.
But last summer we asked him if he wanted to go through our barrels and pull a sample from all of the different mashes and put some notes together on them. And he did it in the L fashion. We have this ridiculously huge spreadsheet with a gold mine of information on what he got from every barrel, including
Wow.
from each barrel the grade that he would give it. So some of them were, this is perfect for blending, and this is the kind of, it'd be a great piece of a classic or whatever it was. But
Yeah.
every now and then he come across one that was so good. He said, this wants to be a single mash or a single barrel release. So he put a grade of A+ on it. And the note at the bottom of his sheet was, if you guys don't do it, I'm sneaking in there one night and doing it myself.
Yeah.
So those are yet to come. So we tell people that last summer we hired Al, the summer student, to go around
Yeah.
and sample barrels, and he did a bang up job of it. So those will be coming sometime soon here.
That's awesome to have that library, that insight to guide. That's really, really cool. What a great story. And
Yeah.
awesome. Did you say Tyson? I didn't quite catch the name of your son.
Tyson, yeah, that's my son's name, Tyson, and he's basically the guy in charge of it now. We all, he hands us samples and he says, here's 3 that I'm thinking about. They're all in the same neck of the woods. Give me your thoughts. And so he shepherds it down the road. We all try to get our 2 cents worth in when we can. It's an interesting relationship. I don't know how many people work with their kids, but you're never not a parent, even though you try not to be. So
Oh yeah.
that's
No,
our daily challenge. I keep
sure.
trying to get out of the way.
A couple people. Are you looking for another summer student to come sample your barrels? Because I think some
We
of us
might
would
have some
love.
volunteers. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
exactly. We'll just
There
throw
a
a
few
cot
more.
in the corner.
Yeah, that's right. James, we did talk about single mash. I think we've already answered that. I feel earlier. Let's see if I can give it back to you. In that incorrect here in Canadian definition of single malt, it means that all the grains in there are malted grains, right? As opposed to Scottish definition, single malt would be only barley. I think that's what we clarify that a little bit, right? So a single, right?
I can't say that I can't confirm that's the rule in Scotland because I don't
Oh
pay
yeah,
too
no,
much
no, no.
attention to
It's
what
okay.
they
You don't have to
do.
confirm
But
Scotland. Yeah,
and it's interesting because I've heard complaints, and of course the Americans are trying to do an American single malt and define that, and maybe they've already got it. Again, I don't pay a lot of attention to it because it's not my world. I got enough problems in my own world.
yeah,
Um, but the fact that in Canada you can use any sort of malted grain, I think is a huge, huge asset for us.
yeah,
And we've tried to use that. I won't call it a loophole because it's just the way it is.
yeah.
But we've tried to use that to our advantage, and I think it's a huge advantage to be able to get, and certainly, um, you know, our desire to take the different kinds of kilned barleys and use all of those, I think, is magic as well as the magic in the barrel.
I agree. This will be the last question, guys. It's funny because it seemed like we were done and they were done and they were saying cheers, and then all of a sudden questions are coming. But I am going to wrap up. But I will ask this question.
Okay.
Um, I don't know if you've met Sons of Vancouver. They're a group that I've been out, and they do a lot of very similar things in the sense that they do a lot of blending. Like when you talk blending in terms of like these barrels and these percentages. I mean, I sat at their table and they tried to teach me that stuff, and it was a lot of fun. But they recently wanted to get a not a batched release like this. They wanted to get an always on the shelf release. And so they have decided their wheated rye, they're going to hit that flavor profile based on the stock that they have. And they're going to keep that on the shelf, and it should stay reasonably close to that flavor profile. So have you ever thought about doing that? Like saying, you know what, a Two Brewers standard or whatever, and that's just going to be something you're going to have to do a lot of work behind scenes so it tastes reasonably like that, as opposed to a batched release.
Yes, we've talked about it. Yes, we know that it would be a good thing to be able to do. Is it in our plans? I would say it's in our plans, but a lot of our plans never happen. So, we'll just have to wait and see. We understand that there's a good reason to do that. There's an advantage to having that. We've thought because these release numbers, eventually the number will be too big that won't fit on the label.
Yeah,
That we need a different way of doing it. So we're pondering the idea, for example, of a 2027 classic, and
yeah,
it's for 2027. So it's not release number or whatever. It's just the 2027. So more like a wine vintage kind
sure.
of approach.
Yeah,
We've talked about that. Um, we have talked to Sons of Vancouver. I think what they do is amazing. The last time I tried some of their whiskey, I mentioned to Jenna, there's only one thing I don't like about this whiskey, and that's that I didn't make it.
yeah.
It was so good.
That's a high compliment.
And
That's
I
good.
think they're doing a bang up job. They tend not to use malts. They tend to
Yeah,
use, and we've talked to them about coming up to the Yukon and maybe trying to get some of their liquid up here, and we'll do some blending together. Two problems with that. One is that everything we make is malted, and that's not true for them. So
right.
one of us would be stepping out of our comfort zone. And the other thing, we had a group of people from Alberta come up about a year ago. I can't remember exactly when, to spend a weekend with us, trying to do some different things. And one of the things they wanted to do was do some blending at a table. And we said no. And the reason we said no is because as whiskey mingles, it changes a lot. So
Mm-hmm.
what you love on Saturday, you may get home on Monday and taste it and go, "This isn't what I remember," or maybe a week later or a month later.
Sure.
That mingling is important. So what we
Yeah.
did is we sent them a bunch of barrel samples and said, "You do this yourself in your kitchen.
Yeah.
Send us the recipe you want us to follow. We'll make a bottle for you, and it'll be waiting here for you when you get back. But
Yeah.
take the time
Yeah.
to let it mingle because." time is an important ingredient in whiskey, and when I say that, everyone thinks time in the barrel, but it's also time in the blending, that it needs mingling time.
Yeah. I am going to say thank you. Going to say thank you for your time. I'm also thanking people online, and yeah, Dave for coming in and in the comments and helping us here as well. So thanks so much, Bob. Thanks for being dedicated to the quality that you are, to producing great whiskey, and I look forward to continuing until the numbers are too big, and then we'll go with something else. I think it's a great idea.
Well, if I can just add one more thing, John.
Sure.
And that's that, in the way we build whiskey releases by taking different ingredients. I think important ingredients and maybe it goes back to that question about the future of Canadian single malts, are the people who enjoy it. They're an ingredient in what we're trying to do here. People like you who are making the big bucks doing what you're doing,
Yeah,
to
that's
put
right.
these kinds of broadcasts on the air,
Yeah.
are also an important ingredient. So, keep doing what you guys are doing. Thanks so much for enjoying and trying Canadian single malt, because it's pretty easy to just drink the Scotch.
Yeah.
And you're pushing your own personal boats out a little bit when you give Canadian malt whiskey a chance. So thanks to you all for doing that.
Thanks. Thanks very much. Thanks for everyone tuned in. You guys have a good night, and go seek out that 52 if you like a little bit of maple, 51 with this enduring peat, and we've all talked about the 50. There's some of that left. You guys go chase it down. Have a good night, you guys.
Thanks, John. Have a great night.